Welcome to Japanese EPG Pathshala of UGC. I am Anita Khanna and I teach Japanese in Jawaharlal Nehru University. Today we are going to study about translation. As we all know, in foreign languages, translation constitutes a major component and it is very important in sharing the knowledge. Especially in case of Japanese and English, we have the other segment of English Japanese also, and today we would like to see basically what are the kinds of or what are the types of translation and how we are going to deal with it. So this is about the basic theory applicable to all the languages, and we will try to gain basic theoretical knowledge about what is translation. This module is a part of paper 10, types of translation. Let's begin with what is the aim of translation. The aim is to disseminate the knowledge, the expertise in different languages so that there are more of intercultural, international communications. For this module, the aim is that after studying it, we would be able to understand the form of translation. Also, we will be able to know the various types of translations. We will also understand as how the type of translation are used in different ways, as we generally think that it is just translation is a simple exercise of converting from one language to another, but it is not limited to that. It has various other aspects. Next, we will understand the nature of translation through the various forms and how to deal with the different types of translations. The form of translation. While discussing about the form of translation, it has been primarily seen from two contexts. One is larger context and the other is limited context. If we look at the larger context, translation is treated as a sign system and considered to be of great significance. In the limited context, on the other hand, the translation is regarded as linguistic act under which it is changed from one language to another language, for example from Japanese to English or from Sanskrit to Hindi, and it means a linguistic transformation which is carried out. What are the major perspectives of translation? Since the translation is regarded as a part of the perspective of sign theory, so let us first discuss a sign system and know what it is. Sign is the main component of the sign system. According to Peirce, a sign is something that stands to somebody for something else in some respect or capacity. For example, if we think about the table, then table is nothing more than a sign instead of being a object or table itself, which has been actually chosen to identify that object, that is table. In other words, we can say that for an Indian, table could be shapes, different dimensions and different shapes, whereas for a Japanese, the table could be, or it could mean a different style or a different dimension. We have dining table, we have study table, and Japanese like that have kotatsu, which is again a kind of table with the heater beneath, and like that. Now, on the basis of sign theory, the change of the linguistic text has been divided into three categories by Roman Jacobson. First is intralingual translation, second is interlingual translation, and the third one is intersemiotic translation. Let's have a look at intralingual translation. Intralingual translation means to express or present the same text from one sign system to another sign system within the same language. It could be also called rewording or rephrasing. Here it is quite clear that both the sign systems are related within the same language. All texts written in Sanskrit are such examples for Indians, whereby the complex text in Sanskrit language is rewritten, have been rewritten in simple language for the benefit of the different grades of the students. In Japanese, the classical form of language is called Kobun, and it has been a major component in writing all forms, at least during the pre-war period. In other words, before the Second World War. Thereafter, due to the standardization of Japanese as modern Japanese, which is in Japanese called Hyojun Nippongo, the complex text of Japanese, be it history, literature, art, religion, have been rewritten in modern Japanese, which is comparatively easy and simple. The change of a text from one sign system of a language to another sign system of another language is called interlanguage translation. It also entails lingual change, as it is clear that it is the process of transformation from one language to another. So, in such kind of translation, the knowledge of the two languages is absolutely necessary. In fact, this deals with the proper translation which we as students of foreign languages deal with. In other words, it is the proper translation in English. Presently, international communications are popularly expanding, and so the interlingual translation is in considerable use and considered to be very important because it is the main source of creative knowledge based on literature and connects us to the world and the advancement in technology, learning, international relations. Since both languages play a significant role, in this case, it is not a simple exercise. A large number of works of Japanese pre-modern classical works, that is Nihon Koten Bungaku Taike, pertaining to classical literature are available in standard modern Japanese, and so in the Gendai Goyaku, and so it has facilitated the research by the foreign students in the areas of classical and medieval works as well as modern Meiji period and pre-modern Edo period works as well. As it is important to have the linguistic component of target language also in intralingual translation and interlingual translations, so in the intersemiotic translation, target language transcends language from lingual to non-lingual forms. In other words, the lingual text is translated from lingual to non-lingual components. For example, the transmutation of a novel or a story into film, drama or serial. This change is more attached to its form than its language. Incidentally, I would like to point out that in paper 16 of this course of Pathshala for Japanese, the course material deals with the adaptation of Japanese novel in cinema. Like as we have a large variety, like the cinema based on Genji Monogatari, the works of famous Taisho writer Akutagawa Ryunosuke, whose famous work Rashomon is world famous. Likewise, the Nobel Prize winner Kawabata Yasunari's Izuno Odoriko, which is literally translated as performers of Izu region of Japan. So the Izu dancers. The pillar of modern Japanese literature Natsume Soseki's Sorekara and Yoshimoto Banana's novel Tsugumi are also treated in some of the modules of paper 16 of this program. Similarly, the renderings of folk songs, poetry into music, songs, tunes or advertisements are examples of intersemiotic translation. The limited context of translation is considered as a linguistic exercise in which the source text is translated into the target language. And so, in this process, the limited context is taken, and such translation is further categorized into two dimensions. One, textual translation, and second, effective translation. Let's have a look at the textual translation, which means a kind of translation in which the source text is important. In this translation, it is expected that the translator should be honest towards the source text and try to contain the spirit of the source text into the target language. The translator cannot in this process of translation use his freedom or take liberties. He has to remain cautious for both the statements and its craft, and they try to bring the same in the target language. Textual translation is more suitable for the purpose of such documents which are official, legal, or any other knowledge literature. On the contrary, effective translation, as when we can see from its very name, is done focusing on the effect of the source text. It is compulsory for the translator to bring the nature or the same effectiveness in the target language, so that the effect of the source text be the same to the reader and the society of target language should be considered. This is possible only when the translator shall, while translating, take as much freedom as required, though cautiously. For this, it is imperative that the translator has the background knowledge and understanding of the cultures of the languages he is dealing with, both the source language and the target language. Furthermore, while explaining in the easy language, we will discuss in detail about the various types of translations. Word-to-word translation. Word-to-word translation means the translation in which the word is taken to be main unit of the translation. For example, early translations of Bible can be included in this category. It was followed by the debate on the translation of Bible in the West, and there were opinions like there can be no exercise or any freedom while translating the religious and sacred texts like Bible. So, the example of word-to-word translation, we can have simple example in Japanese, like in this sentence, Aji to wa ii hito desu. Now, here we take it word by word and include all the words in the source language. Aji to wa ii hito desu. Translation would be, Ajit is a good person. Ajit अच्छा लड़का है. Word-to-word translation is also used in literature, but it is not as successful in the creative literature. In the literary translations, the characteristics and euphemistic words are more important. The characteristics and euphemism is more important than mere description or equivalent meaning of the words. Therefore, the sense is taken to be of the unit of translation instead of sentence or word by word. Literal translation is precise and logical. There is no possibility of multiple meanings in it. On the other hand, it is important for the purpose of communicating knowledge oriented information from one language to another. Free translation or paraphrasing. This translation is based on the main idea of the text. The translator translates mainly the central idea of the source text. Here the base of the idea could be anything such as sentence, phrase, article, or the entire text. Such kind of translation is mostly used in the literary translation. The translator attempts to ensure the flavor or originality while doing the translation, like as it is in the source text. For this purpose, they try to translate the idea of the source text into target language in its exactitude by searching such words from the language and culture of the target language which can generate the same effect. Comparatively, this method of translation is difficult because the translator is not merely expected to possess the knowledge of both languages and the complexities at the cultural level for each one. The translation of proverbs and idioms is an example of this kind of translation. Reflex translation. In this translation, on the basis of the reflex of the source text, a new text is created. This kind of translation is bound by any unit of words or sentences. Rather, it is created as per its own time, space, and circumstances, bearing the influence of the source text. Bhartendu Harishchandra had, while translating Merchant of Venice, the drama of Shakespeare, followed this technique, and the names of characters and places etc. were localized in Indian context. While discussing about the reflex translation, there arises a problem that if this kind of translation is called reflex translation, then what translation is called adaptation or recreation? We shall try to define it while discussing about the various types of translation. Adaptation. While translating under this kind of a translation, the text of source language is changed into the target language without compromising with the mode of the original text. As it is clear that in reflex translation, the form of original text can be translated in any form, but in adaptation it happens on the ground of the form of the original text. There are many examples of adaptation around us: movies made on famous novels and stories, theatrical performances or dramatization of several novels and stories, the composition of songs on the basis of poems. In the recent times, the advertisements are also made on the basis of famous lines of some poetry sequence or song. All such translations are examples of adaptation where the translator has the scope to show his creativity. Recreation. For the literary translation, recreation is used, but when it comes to the translation of poetry, this is the most suitable method of translation, in which the translator is so much engrossed in the poems that after the completion of translation, we get almost a new sequence or a new creation itself. For this kind of translation, the translator should not only have the knowledge of language, culture, but also of a particular mode in which the source text is written, like poetry or drama. The Bhakti-Kalin literature, available in several Indian languages, is the best example of this kind of translation. Gloss translation. Gloss translation has a long history in India. In this, the gloss or explanation is given in the source language or other language. The main goal of the gloss language translation is to provide the source text in more simple language of its own or another, so that the readers can easily understand and enjoy the original text. It can also be called explanatory translation. A large number of gloss translations in Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit languages is available in Indian context. Several explanations are also written based on Gita are good examples. In case of Japan, we have the commentaries written by Prince Shotoku on the Buddhist scriptures translated into Chinese, and these commentaries were useful in propagating the tenets of Buddhism at that time. Essence translation. In this translation, only the essence instead of the whole original text is translated. It is very difficult and complex exercise because it is mostly used in the news agencies, official and legal documents, etc. It is not possible to translate the whole official or non-official documents. In this situation, only the essence of that document is considered for translation. Extempore translation is a kind of a translation in which the translator does not have much time. He is required in the condition when the two speakers of different languages want to communicate without knowing the language of each other. In this condition, bilingual means those who know two languages play the role of the mediator. Such translation is required when the representatives of two different countries discuss important matters or talk to each other on economic, political issues, etc. In other words, it could also be called interpretation, but interpretation has a characteristics of its own, being verbal language to be its base. Retranslation. In the retranslation, the source text, after being translated into the target language, it is retranslated into the source language, as we know that the source text and the target text is never the same. In this process of translation, something is added and something is lost, but if we can get the knowledge of the source text back after translation, it would be considered successful. The help of retranslation is taken to examine the differences which occur after the translation is done. These differences occur at the level of meaning, word hypothesis, sentence structure, and cultural influences. Even after retranslation, if there is no change in the meaning or the spirit of the source text, it is considered to be successful. Transcription. In transcription, the pronunciation is the main base. In this process, the pronounced sounds are scripted. Speeches taken with the help of tape recorders are written and transcribed for several purposes. In this translation, the interviews, speeches, songs, etc. are transcribed on the basis of the pronunciation of the speaker. Script symbols of the target language is decided on the basis of the source language. For this purpose, International Phonetic Chart is used for the purpose of transcription.